just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario on stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Once again with your host, Nick Bernabe, here on ucy.tv and the antimedia.org/radio. I'm really happy to be back alive and well, broadcasting from San Diego, California, on this amazing February 1st. Happy new month, and what a crazy start to 2017. It's been a roller coaster ride so far. Wouldn't you agree with me, DB?
Yeah, I mean, it's almost strategic.
Almost like all this stuff was supposed to happen, right? It seems like many ways. What's going on right now? Tonight we're going to take a break from our philosophical redirect here on the Anti-Media Radio because there is some really, really impactful news going on right now in the United States and around the world. We're going to break into all this stuff. I've got a couple of notes here, big stories that we want to talk about. First of all, what's going on right now in Berkeley? There's a little riot taking place in opposition to a guy by the name of Milo. I don't know how to say his last name, but he's
Yiannopoulos.
Yeah, he's a troll who is a gay Republican who says a bunch of extremely incendiary stuff to be edgy, I guess, is his.
I don't know.
Point.
He's not. I mean, the far left hates him with ire, but he's really hard to pin down because of the demographic which he slides into. So he's like a Greek-born British guy, or sorry, he's a Greek. Like his father was Greek, his mother was British or something. So he's British, right? So then he moves over here, and he starts working for Breitbart, which is like at this point considered alt-right. But back before Breitbart died, they were, they were still considered that, but it was under the radar. They were more an investigative outfit.
Yeah, back Breitbart, when the actual Breitbart dude was still alive, it was a more investigational, conservative, anti-establishment outlet. Now it's become a mouthpiece for Donald Trump. But yeah, go ahead, DB. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that with him is it's easy to dismiss him if you don't like what he says and he's unpopular to your views. But he honestly, if you can watch some of his stuff, he makes a point here or there. He's Jewish. He has a black boyfriend. He's gay. It's hard to pin him down, dude. So he does actually make some decent conservative points. But I get where he's infuriating. The reason he's infuriating is because he actually does make some good points sometimes.
Yeah. Of course, like any other of these characters that have cult followings, I guess you could say, there is some logic to what they're saying, but on the other hand, they're saying a bunch of extremely ridiculous stuff. I mean, this guy is pretty anti-Muslim, and that's just the least of the stuff, the crazy shit that he says. But yeah, I mean,
he's a
right, man. He makes
He's an
points.
ardent anti-feminist. Like that's the main thing with him is he goes to war with the what he calls feminazis.
Yeah, yeah. As if feminism is the big issue of our day. Don't get me wrong. The militant left, on some issues, I think, have gone overboard, and people like Milo are a reaction to that. And it's like the alt left and the alt right are kind of mirrors of each other in some ways. Of course, they appeal to different demographics, obviously, and we could argue for days about which one is worse and which one is better. Let's not get into that, but the reality of the situation is that there's a cause and effect for basically everything, and the alt left is the reason why the alt right is surging. Of course, there's always been an alt right. There's always been the KKK. There's always been white nationalists, white supremacists, and other different things that many people associate. Neo-Nazis.
There's always been communists too, Nick.
Yeah, and there's always been communists, and so these things have they ebb and they flow. Sometimes they go quiet. The KKK was like receding for a long time, and now it's resurging. And different things play into that. But that being said, they're rioting right now up in Berkeley in opposition to this Milo character. And, the whole point of what he's doing is like he's trying to cause this stuff to show, oh, look how bad these people are, and look how violent, and look what's going on. So I don't know which is worse, being purposely, trying to provoke people into violence, or being the people that are provoked into violence. I don't know which is worse, but I think they're both equally stupid for the most part.
He gets rich off being a provocateur, so let's not pretend like he's got some kind of a real ideological bent. He was just number 2 on Amazon's book list. I mean, the guy's probably made a couple $1 million off of this whole tour he did. And now he can, if things go south on him now, he can, go wherever he wants.
Yeah. So that's going on. And let's break into some of this other news stuff. But the thing is there's, and this is a point that I've been making here on the show, and that I've been making personally, and that I've been expressing on social media, and that we've been covering on the Anti-Media website as well, is that maybe there are at least two countries. There's two Americas. There are two United States. The United States is no longer united. So, this guy shows up in California, especially up there in the Bay Area, where it's an extremely hostile area to alt-right ideology, and it just puts itself on display. People are rioting against another guy who's expressing other opinions. Like, this country, I don't know, man, the fabric that holds it together is come undone. And I'm not sure how much further people are going to be willing to go and continue to pretend like the United States is one country before we start getting serious about legitimately breaking it up. And again, it goes back to this idea of the California exit, the secession of California. And then, of course, other states have secessionist movements, including Washington and Oregon, where Jake Anderson is joining us from tonight. What's up, Jake? How you doing tonight, dude? Jake, we can't hear you, man. Are you there?
Jake, are you at a protest or?
Jake's having a moment of silence in protest of the.
Jake hates Milo.
I have a feeling Jake is not a huge fan of Milo. Anyway, let's see if we can get his audio working. It's not working at the moment. We're gonna try again with Jake and see what happens. So yeah, dude. I mean, there's vast different opinions, and this country has grown into, or maybe we shouldn't call it a country. Let's call it an empire. I mean, that's what it really is. It's grown from 13 colonies, which were former British colonies, into this massive landmass that is populated by 300 million plus people. And these people have very, very different views from each other. In fact, I was seeing that someone was making a point today that about 67% of Californians voted for Hillary Clinton over Donald Trump. That's not even including all of the Californians that didn't vote, and so the people that actually voted. Like the overwhelming majority voted for Hillary Clinton. Now I'm not bragging about that. I don't think Hillary Clinton was any better than Donald Trump. I guess that argument.
What was the overwhelming win in the primary, which was completely freaking rigged anyway?
Hey, can you hear me now?
Yeah, Jake, we got you. What's up, man?
Hey, sorry, my microphone was unplugged. That whole technology thing is tricky sometimes.
We need to just burn all this technology in a big pile and just.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know. I'm not in support of Milo, but I don't really know what can be done. You can't. This is just a thin line we're walking between free speech and hate speech, and I'm not sure our society has the tools we would need to make the kind of incision that would be necessary to differentiate those two, and we're seeing the blowback from it.
It's really hard to go around and start criminalizing hate speech because it all depends on who's doing the criminalizing, right?
Right.
If there's like this extremely crazy, left-wing authoritarian government, they could go around and say, well, anyone saying anything that remotely sounds libertarian is hate speech.
There's xenophobic crap I've heard at BLM events, dude. So, it goes both ways. Like, if we're gonna shut those people down and start punching everybody in the face that says racist stuff, we're gonna be punching everybody in the face. Like,
well, I think the two movements are reactions to different historical moments. I think the alt-right is a reaction to white lash in response to a black president, and I think Black Lives Matter is a reaction to police brutality. So I don't think the two can be compared, to be honest with you.
True, I think they are very different. Now here's the other thing. Do you think that maybe the alt-right also had to do with something with a little bit of all this white shaming going on? And this is kind of hard. I can't really comment too much on this because you guys all know I'm a brown dude, but I've noticed there's a lot of white shaming that's been going on for the last 2 years or 3 years. With these articles of like, dear white people this and dear white people that, and hey white people this and hey white people that. I mean, I can't help but feel like there's a certain vein of thought going on among the white crowd, especially among the people in the alt-right or the libertarian-leaning crowd or the conservative-leaning groups, where the people may feel like they're coming under siege. And so the reaction to that is this kind of white nationalism type of feeling and movement that has grown, especially in the last year and a half, 2 years with the alt-right. The alt-right was nothing. 2.5, 3 years ago, it was nothing. It was very, very, very little. And now it's kind of expressed itself in the presidential, election of Donald Trump. It's pretty crazy how quickly it's ascended. But that tells you what kind of crazy extreme times that we're in right now, because it's not just a regular election. We're not just facing typical issues that we've been facing for a long time. We're dealing with very complex and unstable situations. And if you guys listened to our last show, hopefully you did, because Justin King just kind of blew it out of the water. I think he did a really great job. I had a lot of people tell me after the show that it was a really good show, and it's something that I think you should go back and listen to if you're wondering about the direction, the near future, because it's not going to be pretty. I mean, they're rioting right now in Berkeley, in California, against an alt-right figure.
Along what lines it breaks is where it's. I mean, me and Jake were talking about delving into this possibly tomorrow during the show, but because I know we wanted to go more philosophical bend. But here's the thing: the Cal exit's cute, but under a Trump regime, that would just open up the National Guard to come in and clean house. So they'll never let it go. It's not going to happen at least in the next 4 years. Maybe if somehow.
Not to mention the fact that without California's electoral votes, the rest of the country is basically doomed to conservative rule. So if you're a leftist, if you're a liberal, if you're a Democrat, wanting Cal exit is basically you saying that you you don't care about the country, and you just care about yourself. So
it's only going to divide along the three major cities, and now they're even talking about how there's no way in hell they'll give San Diego up. So you'll have an enclave of LA to the Bay. That's California for you.
There's just no way it's going to happen, and that's a friend of mine worded it that it's bad to waste time on absurd crusades. And I know that the Calexit people's hearts are in the right place, but I really think that energy could be diverted into local organization. It's just not going to happen. I mean, it's the same thing as saying that you want there to be no government. Sorry, it's just never going to happen.
I wish it could.
At least not in America. Maybe in the future there will be some decentralized country where everything's based on Bitcoin, and there's some kind of collective hive mind running everything. But it's not going to happen anytime in the next half century in the United States.
We need the robots to take over, bro. And
well, I agree with that. Yeah.
That's why that whole Starbucks PR move where they said we'll hire 10,000 refugees is a joke, because in Singapore they just opened the first fully automated Starbucks. So yeah, they're gonna hire him and then they're gonna fire him right away.
Right. Yeah. No, it's a total stunt by Starbucks, and of all companies to be pandering to social justice. Give me a break. I can't. It doesn't
the
surprise
slave
me.
labor coffee bean
Right.
empire is gonna make the world right.
Right. Yeah. It doesn't surprise me that a lot of my liberal friends who haven't been activists until just this last month are now posting laudatory remarks about Starbucks on Facebook.
Some people that I know that are now just the last month activists have been posting things in support of Dick Cheney because he's anti-Trump.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal that people are talking about Bush nostalgically now.
Not even bullshitting, man. I've seen it too. It's crazy. It's
like, do they not realize Cheney killed 1 million Iraqis? He was directly involved with that decision.
Ridiculous, dude.
No matter how bad Trump is, I doubt he'll ever lead to 1 million people just getting slaughtered out of nowhere. I hope. But
well, if Trump is smart, he will stay out of any major wars, because then he'll be credited as being a peaceful president, and he could very well get reelected if he toes that line. Of course, he's going to benefit from either, because if there's a terrorist attack and we go to war, then he's going to be viewed as the security president. So
I think the best thing Trump could ever do would just be annex Mexico. Let's make the super state.
Make Mexico part of America.
Yeah, just take it. They want to be part of us. Grab them tightly.
Yeah. In fact, I wanted to touch on that because there's some news today on that. But first of all, back to this Calexit thing. Now, I agree with you, Jake. I don't think the people here in California have the balls to follow through on Calexit. They just don't. And let's be honest, the majority of the state has already disarmed itself. They vote to disarm themselves, and I'm sad to, I'm embarrassed to say that my neighbors, and maybe not my direct neighbors, but just generally speaking, the people that live in this state, especially in the extremely liberal Bay Area, they all vote against gun rights all the time. I mean, a lot of these guys, if they had their way, they would completely ban guns, like all the way. And so this Calexit movement, good luck trying to secede from the United States without being extremely armed.
Yeah,
so the people have already kind of shot themselves, no pun intended, but they shot themselves in the foot here. That being said, is Calexit itself, unrealistic? I think, it's a little unrealistic. But here's my argument. The whole fabric of this country is coming undone, and sooner or later it's going to be ripped apart into pieces, and there's no longer going to be a central bureaucracy that can hold it all together like there was back in the days of Abraham Lincoln. At some point, we're going to have to embrace the fact that this country is just so damn big now and so immensely populated and so diverse, not only ethnically, not only socially, not only politically, but just in so many different ways, that we're going to get to a point very soon where people are just going to say, you know what, it's time to break it up, and this is not exactly, but a similar thing happened in the USSR. I mean, it was a big giant super state, and then all of a sudden there was like 30 states. I don't even know how many states were created out of the USSR. It was a bunch, and so sooner or later, I think the pieces start to come apart. And looking back historically speaking, and this is what you see happen in most empires. I guess the British was just a little bit of a different example, because instead of it snapping into pieces, the pieces started kind of seceding from the empire in a different kind of way. The countries were overthrowing they were having revolutions, kicking the British out instead. But look at the Roman Empire. You had the Eastern and the Western Roman Empire, and look at it today. The remnants are still there. Turkey is still kind of that Eastern, Roman Empire that it used to be, and the Ottoman Empire that came after it. The Mongolians split apart, when they had their huge state. So it definitely makes sense, I think, that sooner or later this country, which started off as only 13 colonies, which has grown now into 50 plus other territories, sooner or later it's going to come apart. And I think that we're inching closer to that point. I don't know if it's going to happen under Trump. And I don't think it's going to be California on its own. It's going to be a bunch at the same time. And, that's where the big difference is, man. Looking back at like Abraham Lincoln, it was just the South altogether. They were like, you know what, peace out. And then it was just like the North versus the South, two armies fighting each other. I mean, what are you going to do when there's 30 different states that decide to snap off and become independent? Are you going to go fight 30 different countries with just Washington, D.C.? I mean, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Make an interesting point.
Yeah, I mean, in the future, sometime soon, it's becoming inevitable. I mean, look how divided this country is, dude. And when I first got into activism, I had this idea that we were going to unite everybody, and that we were going to, we're going to find a cause that is so great that everyone's going to jump on board, and we're going to end the wars, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. Dude, I mean, after realizing over the years, it's been like, 5 or 6 years that I've been involved in activism for a huge part of my life. It's become pretty obvious that we're not ever going to get to this utopian idea where activism is going to unite 98% of the people in this country, and we're all going to undo all the injustice and stuff. I mean, that's utopian as hell. It's not going to happen. I mean, the more realistic idea is thinking a little bit more in the direction of Calexit and breaking it up to where we don't have this huge federal tyranny that gets to tell everybody how their money is going to be spent, or that we're going to go bomb countries, or that we're going to go send special ops troops into Yemen and kill an 8-year-old American girl. You guys hear about this, man? This is the story I want to talk about. And
it was a girl whose brother was killed by an Obama strike, right?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, and that to me, dude, just, oh my God, it blows my...
Nick, I want to just chime in real quick that I actually think that you may be correct in terms of a long view of what's going on. I do think eventually what you're saying is right, which is that it'll just be simply untenable to keep so many different people who disagree so violently with each other together. I guess I was just referring to a more short-term play of people actually trying to get Calexit on the ballot this time around. I just think is really foolhardy. I think if people really care that much, and let's be honest, most of them are liberals. If they really care that much, you need to be looking to House seats in the midterms, in the 2018 midterms.
Yeah, dude, that's true, man. I don't know when it's gonna happen. I think I'm a little more advanced in my philosophy. Of course, we're talking about some fringe philosophies. These are, but new ideas always start at the edge, and they move their way in, right? They start on the fringe and they become mainstream. This idea of secession, it's so fringe right now. I mean, they put it to rest back during the Civil War. They put this idea that people are going to secede, and they put it to rest. But now it's going back from the fringes, and it's starting to come back into the mainstream. I remember just a year ago when people were talking about Texas seceding and stuff, and the mainstream media is like treating it as this ridiculous idea that is just so extreme, far right, like right-wing extremism type of stuff. And now it's people on the left in California that are saying, hey, maybe this isn't such a bad idea. And so now it's definitely becoming part of the conversation. And it's only a matter of time before I think people start to realize, okay, you know what, we need to start embracing this. And I think Trump is going to usher that movement in because look at what he's doing. He's doing stuff with our money that is pretty damn unpopular. Like building this wall and all this stuff, or for instance, killing an 8-year-old American girl in Yemen. I mean, oh, Jake, like you said, dude, Obama killed her brother who was only 16. He was a U.S. citizen. He was taken out by Obama, and their dad was taken out by Obama. All three of these people were Americans killed by our government without a trial. And the last one, the 8-year-old girl, I mean, this is unbelievable, dude. It's heartbreaking. This 8-year-old girl was not a terrorist, okay? Now, I guarantee you everyone in her family, they're going to be terrorists because you just killed an innocent 8-year-old girl, and they're going to want to hurt you. You know, this really just, it's mind-numbing. And I've seen people online kind of celebrating it. Like, oh, Trump, that was such a great, awesome first, you know, special ops strike by Trump. Man, he got all the, I think they said that he killed like, I think they got like 20 or 30 Al-Qaeda dudes or something. But again, they got an 8-year-old American girl too. Very sloppy work. They lost a Osprey, which is a very expensive aircraft. One of the guys died. One of the U.S. military guys died in the raid as well. You know, this was sloppy, dude. Very sloppy. And it's happened already. You know, there was only like 3 or 4 instances. There's only 2 well-known instances where Obama actually did that, where he killed U.S. Citizens, and which was that girl's older brother and her dad. But Trump's only been in office less than a month, and he's already killed an 8-year-old American overseas without trial, without her even being. I don't even know if you can convict someone that young of terrorism. I mean, that's ridiculous. So it's a slippery slope. And you know what? I hate to say it, dude, but where in the hell was the left when Obama was doing this shit and setting a precedent for it to be done? It's legal now. Obama
they were playing with their iPhone. That's what they were doing.
Do you know what's ironic?
Came up with the legal framework to justify this stuff, and it's so obscure and it's such it's so much legal jargon and all that it's you can't really say that it's quote unquote illegal. Technically it's legal for Trump to do that stuff, and it's horrible. Yeah. That's possible. It's ridiculous. And it wasn't until Obama until they really put it in writing and said, okay, yeah, this is okay now. And where was everybody complaining? Nobody was. And so that's bullshit, dude. Like, we need to start standing on principle. And how many times do we have to repeat this? Like, it's not about the party. It's not about Trump, or it's not about Obama, or if it would have been Hillary Clinton, whatever. The parties don't matter as much as the principles, man. We don't want to be allowing our government to go around bombing people, especially U.S. citizens, without giving them a fair trial, or, you know, executing them or assassinating them without having a legitimate, you know, trial and evidence and all the stuff that you're supposed to have when you have a rule of law. And the thing I find ironic is that Trump is going around talking about how, oh, you know, we need to restore the rule of law, we need law and order, blah, 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 blah. It's like, dude, you're the biggest one going extrajudicial right here, dude. You're going around killing U.S. citizens around the world. That's not right. The rule of law is not in play right now, and you're talking about restoring it. And so that to me is like, well, what rule of law is this guy talking about, man? It just blows my mind. Blows my mind. DB, talking about what's going on in Mexico. Did you guys hear today about Trump had a phone call with the Mexican president, Peña Nieto, and he basically told him, and you got to take this verbatim here. He called them, quote unquote, bad hombres. Trump told Mexican President Peña Nieto if he didn't take care of the bad hombres, that he would send the U.S. military into Mexico to take care of them for him. And I guess he's talking about the drug cartels. So Trump is threatening to send the U.S. military into Mexico at this point.
Yeah, but that's a WAPO article.
It was on the Associated Press. So
yeah, it's bullshit. There's no way, dude. Here's what's gonna happen. The Mexican army is gonna get pressured into just crushing the cartels with our military. I don't know, but we're not gonna Why would we ever threaten Mexico? Like, that's the stupidest thing ever. We're like natural allies.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, dude. But why would we?
That's straight CIA crap right there. That's a propaganda article.
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Why would we threaten to build a wall there? Why would we threaten to slap tariffs on 20% on Mexico? I mean, the next logical step to a trade war is a real war, and so this to me is what is really baffling, man. And you're right that it's stupid as hell. But
what do you know what they would have to do, Nick? They'd have to intern the whole Southwest. Like they couldn't trust anybody because they'd be like, well, they're of Mexican descent, so we don't really know. It would be it literally, and then like if you look at the army's like half Latino, so that's not going to work. But what would work would be if we took them over, if we annexed them, or some situation where we crush the cartels. The cartels already threatened to assassinate Trump. Like, that's the dumbest shit you could ever do. Now he's just going to unleash the deep state on them.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know how to read this. I'm worried that Trump's policies and especially his rhetoric, man. His rhetoric is very damaging.
But no American's gonna. I'll never fire on Mexico ever, no matter what, and I'll never draft to fight them ever. And I think 90% of Americans are like, maybe you'll get the total idiots, and they'll just get killed real quick. But like, nobody's gonna fight them, man. They're our natural brothers and sisters.
You got to remember, dude, is that a lot of people, most people, didn't grow up down here in the Southwest and aren't cool with Mexican culture and understand, what's happening. I mean, Trump got elected on anti-Mexican rhetoric. He got elected on anti-Muslim rhetoric. I mean, the guy is a class A demagogue, and that's what got him elected. So we can't really. I mean, from where I stand, I agree with you. I'm like, dude, nobody's stupid enough to do that. But I don't know if the rest of America stands there because the people don't understand what's going on here at the border.
Here it wouldn't work. Like and I'm in Minneapolis and in Chicago, it wouldn't work because a lot of Mexicans moved here to do jobs. They're hard-ass workers, and people understand it and respect them as a culture. So I just could never see that, man. Only the dumbest idiots would ever fight in a war against Mexico again.
Yeah, and so looking back, and I was looking at my article from earlier this month about Mexico because those protests are still going. They just shut the border down just this past weekend here in San Diego. Keep in mind, the San Ysidro border crossing is the busiest in the world. And they shut the border crossing down just this past weekend. Again, I think this is like the fourth or fifth time the border has been shut down. So the level of unrest in Mexico right now is like at it's near record highs. Like they're just kind of they're much closer to any kind of revolutionary ideas than the United States. I mean, they're getting pretty damn close. I don't know how soon it'll be. Again, it's really hard to predict exact dates and times of these things, but in the next 5 to 10 years, the odds of Mexico having a revolution are pretty high from my opinion.
Nick, do you think like we have a lot of friends that the parents came up from Mexico and then they have they're deeply patriotic to the U.S., but also, of course, are super proud of the Mexican heritage. And I wonder if the people down there were like, screw this government, the cartels, they're in bed together. We want do you think if the Mexican people would ever ask us to come fix it?
I don't think they would, man, because they don't really trust us that much.
But doesn't the average American, the average Mexican person we can totally get along normally? It's not a culture barrier, really. I mean, Spain and England,
working class American and the working class Mexican have a lot of things in common. But it's just a drastically different culture that would just, on in certain levels it's cool, but getting the Mexicans to invite the U.S. over there to help them toss out their government, it would never happen because those guys understand that our government is like they know that it's a big ass empire too. They would never do that unless, if we're talking about hypotheticals here in the future when the U.S. has fixed all of its problems and it actually is a global force for good, that'd be a whole other story. But at the moment, man, dude, especially not with Trump around or anything like that. These guys cannot stand Trump. It's like, the only person more unpopular than Trump in Mexico is their own president. You know what I'm saying? Like it's at that point. But here's the thing. We may be looking at a situation where there's extreme instability in Mexico pretty soon. And so then talking about a military option from the U.S. looking into Mexico, I don't think it would be that far-fetched, especially considering, remember back to our theories on that stuff with Jade Helm, and everybody was like worried, like all these conspiracy theories were sprouting up about Jade Helm and how it was going to be like Obama's going to make a bunch of FEMA camps and, lock everybody up. And it was just, it was taken out of proportion, like to the max. But in the end, it still was a military operation that was conducted in the Southwest United States. And nobody knew the exact reason for it. It does make sense to me that it was probably something.
It was for this, huh, Nick?
Yeah, that it would deal with, the situation of extreme unrest in Mexico and trying to contain it from spilling over into the United States. So I think
a wall.
A wall would be probably something that, maybe Trump is their backhanded way of trying to put a wall.
They had like a think tank that came up with it. They're like, there's going to be a revolution in Mexico. We need to build this wall to protect ourselves.
Yeah. Because here's the thing, dude. And here's what the people that run, here's what the military industrial complex knows about Mexico. They know that we've armed up the Mexican government and their police forces with probably now tens of billions of dollars worth of military equipment, tanks, helicopters, Humvees, loads and loads of machine guns. Dude, you go down to Mexico and you go through, if you're driving around there for a while, you end up going through a military checkpoint. You'll see the fact that they got a bunch of American-made Humvees and American equipment. We know what they've got down there. They've got a lot of guns. And so, the thing is that the public in Mexico, they've banned guns for the public. The public can't own guns. So a lot of families still own guns, but a lot of them are like older, old school rifles that maybe some of these guys are veterans that used to fight in the Mexican army and they have guns. Most of the guns are held by the government and the cartels. So if there's a war that pops off in Mexico, that's who's going to be, those two groups, and then the U.S. is going to be backing one side of it, right? Because that's normally, or maybe we'll be playing both sides, but we've already armed up the government to the extreme. Now, if the U.S. was genuine about wanting to work with Mexico and do something right, well, they'd end the drug war. They'd legalize all the drugs and start, airing out the cartels. The cartels would start evaporating the moment you started making drugs legal. If we wanted to really help Mexico and help them like get stable again and help them prevent having a violent revolution, well, that's what we do.
It'd be cool to not flood the cartels with guns too.
According to that report, and again, you could be right. Maybe it's just bullshit. I read it on the AP. The AP is just you got to take their word for it, and they have all these quote unquote government sources. So who knows what the real, if this really happened or not. But if Trump's saying he'd send the military down into Mexico to fight the cartels, it kind of does line up to his other rhetoric and to his other policies. It's an emotional appeal to say, hey, look, we're getting tough on drugs and we can't really finish it off here because it's just creating mass incarceration. So we're just going to send our army down to Mexico to crush the supply, and of course it's not going to work, but just because it's not going to work doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I mean, if it did, now, DB, back to what you were saying earlier, would Mexico invite us over? The Mexican people would not invite us over, but the Mexican government, the current government of Mexico, they may let us in to their own detriment. I mean, it would be extremely unpopular.
Just to save themselves.
If it was strictly out of self-preservation, where the government was like, holy shit, a revolution is popping off, yes, then they would bring the U.S. in to back them militarily, I think. So, yeah, in that aspect, that could happen, dude. But that is something that would be, then we're talking about arming, putting down a government or putting down a rebellion right next door. That would be really touchy socially, dude. Domestically here too. You would be looking at a lot of blowback, also from the Latino community here in the United States, who would be against the crackdown because everyone knows how bad the Mexican government is. So if we were to
what Mexico needs is
that would be very unpopular.
What Mexico would need is just our tech, man. And if we ever can combine, dude, that'd be like it'd be the superpower of all superpowers. Like all their food, all their labor. I mean,
that's kind of what that they were trying to do that with NAFTA, dude. But it didn't work out because it was too corporate. It was tilted too far towards the make corporations extremely rich and basically screw everybody else.
Well, if China's too scary and things have to be done, then things have to be done. I don't know.
Now, here's the thing, dude. Like, if NAFTA had been a trade pact that actually enriched the middle class, like a lot of both countries, we would be looking at a whole different situation right now, bro. We wouldn't be dealing with an immigration crisis. We wouldn't be dealing with this nationalistic, protectionist.
Yeah, because Mexico is solidly middle class even in my youth. Exactly. And like NAFTA crushed them just like it crushed our middle class. Our manufacturing base died, so like our lower middle class died, and then I remember Mexico's intellectual class all came up here, like they just fled.
Dude, if NAFTA hadn't backfired and ripped all the working class people off and made the rich people richer, if that hadn't happened and the NAFTA actually did what it was supposed to do, which was make everybody, all the working class, middle class people, much more, higher standard of living and better jobs, there'd be almost no border right now. There wouldn't be an immigration crisis. We wouldn't be having to be all like super strict.
There was no border.
Shit, like we got to stop the border because a bunch of people are trying to come up here. It would be like Europe, dude, where the borders are opened up because all the people are benefiting from all this wealth being created and not just a handful of billionaire dudes that have ripped everybody off and then tricked everyone into blaming Muslims and immigrants and other people. Like it's interesting to see like people people fall for this shit who I have respect for. And I'm not going to say I don't have respect for them anymore, but you lose a little bit when you see people who you think are like free-thinking people buy into the xenophobia, this scapegoating of like, it's not the deeper, systemic issue. It's like it's just the Muslims and it's just illegal immigration. That's the only problem we have. And that's how, to stopping that. It's like, no, you guys are not understanding. Like there's deeper policy issues that are creating refugee crisis by dropping bombs. And then, I would consider in many ways the Mexican illegal immigration issue is in many ways economic, refugees. And so people are running from these horrible conditions, cartel violence and stuff like that.
Yeah. If it was so great to live in Mexico, you would stay because it's your culture. You're more comfortable. So when people leave and go, it would be like if you left the U.S. to move to Mexico for a new job. You would only do that if like it was a lot more money, right? Well, it's the same in reverse. Just think about it that way. And then the second thing I just want to really quickly point out is, in the 60s and the 70s, people in San Diego and even LA, they bought beach houses in Ensenada and Rosarito because they were like a tenth of the price of a house. And they could just go up and down, and they got 99-year leases. So they just passed them to their kids passed them to their kids. That was reality. And because of NAFTA, the Mexican government took those back. That's a reality. I had a neighbor who had a second-generation beach house in Ensenada, and it was taken back by the next Mexican government in retaliation for NAFTA. Bill Clinton is a big asswipe down there, and everyone hates him.
Hey, but he's a lot cooler than Hillary.
Yeah, he can play a saxophone right up her butt.
He's a smooth talker, that Bill Clinton. Man,
Go get it, Jake. Get it.
Yeah, Jake. Dude, you've lived here in San Diego. You lived here for several years.
Yeah, I miss it. I mean, I lived there for like 5 years. I kind of miss it actually.
And I mean, the situation around here with the border region and how much economic activity it creates and all the stuff that happens here because of it. I mean, I think that we'd be looking at a whole different situation, dude. A whole different reality.
Yeah, there's no doubt that NAFTA fleeced at least two countries. That's why you could argue that's why Trump is president, is because
Exactly what I was going to say.
the three states that this election came down to were all three states that were heavily affected by NAFTA.
Yeah, dude, that's exactly what I was going to say, man. Like, if it weren't for the backfiring of NAFTA, we wouldn't have Donald Trump right now. It would not be Donald Trump, and it would
No way.
be in a whole different situation. He wouldn't have even been in the primary. He wouldn't have even been running. And you know what? Who knows what would,
It would have been Tipper Gore.
Yeah. But yeah, dude, it had a major backfiring thing, and that's really the underlying issue here, dude. And these companies have made a killing again with NAFTA, and basically everybody else got shortchanged. All the American workers lost their high-paying jobs. The entire Mexican economy was like the big problem was that it was like shifted, and so like of course some people are going to be able to adapt and like get the new jobs. Other people couldn't, and then they bounced out. And they started coming up here because they lost their livelihoods in Mexico and they didn't know how else. There was no other jobs there that they could take. Shit changed and they had to go. Came here. So.
Oh, sorry, Nick.
Yeah, so like it really was that one policy. You could look back at it and say that's what gave us Donald Trump. And that's what's now given us these crazy policies with building a wall and putting tariffs, which is going to raise everybody's prices. And then, talking about deportations and, immigration checkpoints. There's immigration checkpoints already here on the outskirts of San Diego if you're heading north or northeast. Or if you're trying to get out of San Diego, you have to go through border checkpoints.
Is that confirmed, Nick?
Border patrol checkpoints. And they check your shit, dude. Like just yesterday or the day before, the one was open here in heading north heading towards like LA. And they were checking everybody's documentation at that checkpoint. Everybody. So like, I mean, this is already going on, dude. They're already going through and checking everybody's documentation. And if you look a little bit too Mexican, they may just put you into secondary inspection and really run you through the ringer, dude. I mean, this is already happening to people I know. So
yeah, that's scary. Jeez.
Situation, dude. And so because of that, we can look back at NAFTA and say this is probably why a lot of this stuff is happening, and it's not good, and it's making people angry and upset around here, like really bad.
They're gonna justify it's because there's a huge ISIS presence in Mexico. Watch.
Yeah, those bogus reports about ISIS bases being in Mexico, I don't see it. ISIS only exists where there's, a oppressed Sunni Muslim population that doesn't really exist in Mexico. So ISIS isn't there. But I don't know, man. It's just
Nick, are those the border patrol checkpoints that are there now? They're just fully manned all the time.
Not all the time, but yesterday they were up and running and they were checking everybody's documentation
all day.
Yeah, dude.
Like California driver's license, or did you need to pull a passport or something?
Well, it depends. It all depends, man. They can send you through secondary inspection for whatever reason. It's happened to me 3 times, and all 3 times was bogus. And I had done nothing wrong, and I got run through secondary. They check your paperwork. They pull you out of the car. They search your car. If you let them, they'll search your person too. I don't let them do that shit. And in fact, I also object to them searching the car, but they've got a loophole every single time. They've got a loophole. Yeah. It's if you don't show your if you don't consent, we get out the K9 unit, and the K9 unit comes around and they pretend every time they say there's something
positive bark.
Yeah, they always say there's something in the back of your trunk, in the back of your car, and then they're like, all right, dude, K9 says you got something, so
Yep.
You got to get out, and they search through your shit, hold you up for like 30 minutes, detain you, and then you're pretty much. Then they're like, "Oh, all right, man, you can go." Yeah, thank you. You just invaded my privacy, violated my constitutional rights, and delayed me on my way of travel for 30 minutes to an hour. Yeah, thank you very much, too. I really.
You gotta wear a suit everywhere, Nick.
So, they're already, and this happened before Trump's policy went into place, where I have some people that I personally know got affected by these Border Patrol just profiling people, dude. Just because they look Mexican, like, oh, well, you got to prove to us. You have to prove to us that you're an American. Even though you're sitting here, I'm in the United States right now. I'm sitting here in California. If I go too far down the street, down the east direction, then I run the chance of getting profiled by the Border Patrol and saying that I have to prove that I'm an American, otherwise I can't leave, or they hold me in a holding cell or put me in jail. That's already happening right now. It's personally, the people I know, it's happened, and it's not a good thing, dude. And it's going to anger people around here. And if Trump goes through with these kind of deportation ideas, and keep in mind, he advocated profiling during his primary election. If Trump goes through with that stuff, we talked about this last show, people are going to be very angry, and they're not going to just sit around and take it. Like we said, California has already got 20 to 30% of the people here already want to break away from the United States.
It just makes me worried, dude.
Radicalized, man, that would be. I mean, they're rioting right now. They're rioting in Berkeley. So, I mean, these people have already become radicalized here.
But a Trump regime's not going to let California go, dude. They're not. They're going to send in National Guard. And, like, I have you guys and all my family and friends are all back there. That shit is worrying, dude. I talk to people out here. They don't even consider California a part of the country anymore. They want National Guard to go in, some of these crazy-ass people that I've talked to, dude. So...
Yeah, dude. So we don't want that, right? We don't want the military coming down on us. But
it's got to be lawsuits. You just got to jam up the courts. I'll sue him because it's against your civil rights, your actual natural human rights to detain you. If you're a citizen, they can't just detain you. What was the reason for it? What was the concrete reason? They have to prove that. If they didn't, then that was false imprisonment. You can get money. That's going to have to be the way it works.
Yeah. Damn, dude.
Class action, maybe, because if you guys want to get, like, the best lawyer and just all pool up.
Yeah. I mean, it's going to have to be challenged in court, but I don't know how much it's, the court.
Violence should be the last resort because it's going to get really, really, really bad down there.
Yeah, dude. I don't know if we want to, rely on the courts at this point, because didn't the court already rule that, that Trump's immigration rule was like partially unconstitutional, but then some of the DHS were like still enforcing it and stuff. I mean, so, are the courts going to hold up at this point? I mean, we're getting to a pretty.
Can they prove?
The breakdown of rule of law is pretty, we're pretty much on the cusp of the breakdown of rule of law. So we're getting in a pretty interesting time.
I don't know though. I feel like you got to at least exhaust that opportunity. Try to get money for people. If people get paid enough, then it's like a reparation for their mistreatment. Yeah, it never makes it better, but at least they get some justice or something for it. Before we get all crazy, we talked, Nick, years ago, at least 5, about how the division would be the military fight each other, the people take out the government or whatever. But now I'm starting to see more and more that the military is kind of starting to side with the government. So it's going to be a different thing than we thought if it gets to a bad position. Just my own theory.
Yeah, dude. I think, the other thing is the military is not immune to the regular old bureaucratic stuff. The brass of the military, the generals and stuff, that's a different story. But like the rank and file active duty military guys, they could be as easily swayed by political rhetoric as the rest of us. and so there's no real telling where where the chips are going to fall when it comes to all those guys. And there could be separate wings of different groups of, the Army and the Marines and the Air Force choosing sides in a civil issue inside the U.S. or, maybe from looking at it in a different way. Like, what about the military presence in California, the bases and all that stuff? If this, Cal exit thing succeeds, how does that get split up? Does the military fall into each state where it's located? Does it all go back to Washington, D.C.?
How much is Pendleton worth?
I mean, would these military guys actually defend Washington, D.C. if the rest of the country was like, you know what, screw Washington, D.C., we don't want to listen to them anymore? Would the military fight for Washington, D.C.? I don't know. I don't think so, dude. Not the active duty guys. I don't think those guys. I think most of the guys that are just entry level kind of, soldiers in the military, they distrust Washington, D.C. as much as every other person, which is pretty much everybody, right? So it's going to be really hard to say or predict how anything like that would happen. It's really a wild card when it comes to all this, is the military. We know where the bureaucracy is going. We know the geopolitics. These guys are, starting tension. That's the other thing, dude. This is the big story that we don't want to forget about tonight, about what's going on with Iran, dude. They now officially are no longer dealing in the U.S. dollar. Last year, we know that they talked about moving some of their transactions away from the U.S. dollar. But now Iran, responding to Trump's travel ban, has officially ended all dealings, all government dealings in the dollar. And so this is something, and we all know what happens when people stop dealing in dollars. It doesn't end well.
Looks like Iran needs some freedom.
Exactly.
They need democracy.
Exactly.
You know what I want to just briefly point out is they were going to sign this bill that was going to allow a preemptive strike to be legal. And the only thing I'm just waiting for is some statement by Putin on RT that says Iran is behind the Syrian buildup of rebel troops, and we've decided that we can no longer trust them. That would be a green light, and then we would go after them. The only thing keeping us from going after Iran right now is Russia.
Yeah, dude. That's the big question. And I saw a theory today that Syria would be traded to, they'd say, okay, Russia, here's Syria, we're not going to mess with it anymore, but you got to give us Iran. And that is a deal that maybe could be
exactly
they're trying to work on. But yeah, there's a bill in the Congress going around. It's not being voted on. There's no official date for it or anything. It's been in Congress, I think, since like 2014. That would give the president the power to go ahead and just start bombing Iran and, more or less starting a war with Iran.
Let's see if they tear up the nuclear deal, which is probably going to happen.
Yeah, there's that. Iran just tested a missile, and then the U.S. took a very unprecedented step. I think it was Flynn that came out today during the White House press conference and basically scolded Iran and said that this was a warning or whatever going out. And then Iran is officially abandoning the dollar. We're looking at right now the pre-propaganda war on Iran. So we got to be really careful, man, because if we're not, Trump and them are going to start us up with a war in Iran, and that's not something. It's not. Iran is not Iraq, dude. This is a big war with a pretty advanced country.
Oh, could I?
Going to be easily won, and we never even won Iraq. We didn't win Iraq.
Can I?
Go to Iran and actually win that war?
No. Can I throw a plug out? Tomorrow we'll have LD.
Yo, here we go through the stereo.
BY.TV.